and we're live. We're on. I always say that whenever I start recording. I always say we're live. Yes, we are live. Welcome back. I didn't realise it had been quite so long since my last video, but you can be sure whenever I do make a return, it's usually because I have a little bit of inspiration for the next video topic. As of filming this, it is currently the off season, and while people are out enjoying a whole host of summer basketball events, as they should, I actually wanted to take the time to just reflect on the past season and everything I've been lucky enough to be involved with. Last time I did something like this, it was about 6 months after starting JLR Videography, which, for those of you that don't know, is my own basketball videography account. You can go and check it out. So it'll be cool to see how much more I've learned since then, and just to be able to look back on what has been a truly crazy season. I can remember my first season of basketball videography and thinking, wow, that was amazing. It probably can't get better than this. And somehow it did. It also became a lot harder, which I guess is something that happens naturally when you're working on something, much like, I guess, learning a musical instrument. The more you learn, the better you get, and the harder the pieces become. So there's a lot I want to discuss, and if you're a videographer or you're involved in sports media in any way, maybe there's something you can take away from this, but if I'm being honest, this is kind of just more for me, just to have a record of the 22-23 season. God, how selfish of me is that, making a video on my channel about myself. It's crazy. So let's begin by jumping back a year to last summer. So last summer, I was coming off the back of my first full season doing basketball videography. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I think I did quite a lot of good content, stuff that I was proud of, but I really wanted to use the summer to learn some new skills and maybe try out things that I didn't have time to during the season. So the biggest thing that I started doing, and it sounds crazy that I'm saying this now because it's such a normal thing, is working with 9x16 or vertical video. It's almost a given now that it's a standard format. Whenever you're making a video, you do one in 16:9 as you normally would, and then you always do a cut down 9x16 version. But at the time, this was my first attempt at trying to kind of fit the style of editing and also take the shots that I'd filmed for 16:9 and put them into vertical video. The first one I went to was actually at the Coach Rob testimonial event, which was pretty fun. And watching it back, it's not bad. You know, the pacing's nice, there's some nice shots in there. It was my first time actually taking a whole load of game highlights and really trying to cut down which are the good ones, which are gonna look good in maybe like 45 seconds. Yeah, it looks pretty standard. It's not half bad. Nice little summary of the game there. So this was something I tried out a couple of times with different tracks, with different events, and I'd say the two that I was most happy with and the ones that I still look back on and think, yeah, those are pretty good, were the Gino Crandall mix. You know, in my opinion, that one got slept on a little bit. It was an edit where all the footage just seemed to fall into place so nicely. I feel like I didn't really have to do much, and I was pretty pleased with the shot selection, so yeah. And the second one, of course, being the dunk contest highlights from Burnout, which was just an insane competition on its own. But yeah, it actually got some attention from the guys themselves, and it was my best performing reel at the time. I think it still is. There's one video I completely forgot to mention, which was the Hemel Storm team lineup video. That one was really cool, looking back. I haven't done anything like that since. I guess I just had more time. And probably that's the best piece of advice I'd give to anyone who's, you know, working through a sporting season, is in your off season, if you have the time, definitely use it to experiment, try out different things. If you have an idea in the season, maybe save it for the summer. It's just a fun time to maybe learn something new that you can carry into the season and just have another tool in your arsenal. So as the season got underway, my focus was really on the NBL, as there are quite a few teams near me that are easy to get to, and just a lot of talented teams as well that I was keen on watching. As you can probably tell, the teams that I most frequently visited included Hemel, Reading, TBC, Solent, and newcomers on the block, MK. So with the first few games of the season, I tried to do a set of highlights as a post, and then also a 9x16 reel, which was kind of just a flavour of the game, or maybe it was a focus on a particular player or a team, just as an additional bit of content. And to be honest, that was kind of more fun for me because I was able to be more creative. I was always looking for different tracks that I could use. And I think it really helped me to develop my editing skills because I kind of found the pace to be faster. When I look back at some of my earlier edits, I feel like they're slow. I feel like it lingers on some of the shots for too long. But with the reels, because you're trying to keep people's attention, especially within the first few seconds, you kind of have to keep the cuts quite quick. It makes it easier as well with a lot of the songs where there's kind of like a short kind of build up to the chorus or to the start of the song, and that kind of dictates how your edit's gonna go. But yeah, if I'm looking at a few of the reels that I quite liked during the first half of the season, obviously the first one I did on MK Breakers was pretty cool because I got to use like a breakbeat style track. I thought that was pretty appropriate. It's a really good one I did on Hemel Storm when they had just the most insane game against TVC, just everything was dropping for them. They were just putting on a show. So it was a pretty busy start to the NBL season, but this season was also my first opportunity to work on Euroleague and Euro Cup games. For those of you that follow me on social media, you'll know that my full-time job is actually an assistant producer and focusing specifically on Euroleague and Euro Cup. And at the start of the season, I worked in the digital team, which meant we were making game highlights every game night, and we were trying to do additional bits of content as well. And I think this is where the season really kicked in very early on, because we had Euro Cup games on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and we had Euroleague games on Thursday, Friday nights, and some weeks we had Euroleague games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which is great because it meant I could get to NBL games at the weekend, but also by the time it got to the weekend, I was pretty knackered. And I feel like this is something that a lot of creatives don't talk about, is burnout. While I felt like I was putting out a lot of good content, like I went to the London Basketball Classic, did some good stuff there, I put out some good stuff for the Euroleague socials, I can't lie, it was pretty tough. And I think I found it difficult to know what the solution was because the season was kind of going on. It wasn't like I could just stop, but at the same time, I was becoming aware of kind of the workload and how much time I was spending editing, and it's difficult to know what to do. If there's anyone watching who knows more about how to deal with burnout as a creative, then I'd be very interested to hear about it. But it was kind of just grinding it out until the Christmas break, and then I could have some time off and really sort of recharge going into the second half of the season. So with the second half of the season, I put out my 2022 reel, which I was really happy about, and it was kind of something I'd always wanted to do at the start of the year, so it was just amazing to finally see it done. And there were a couple of things I tried to help manage my time a little bit better, so that I wasn't going to suffer in the same way that I did in the first half of the season. The first thing I tried was going to fewer games every weekend, which sounds obvious, but instead using footage I'd already shot to try and make promos. I did this with a few events. I did one for the Kit King Trophy final, and my favourite one was for the Rebound All-Stars. Once again, this was kind of an example of taking the time to actually craft something good. And yeah, I was really happy with how it came out. I had, thankfully, shots of pretty much every player that was featured there. So I was able to do that cool introduction. And yeah, the music definitely helps with this. I really feel like I got the perfect track. It was a nice length and it had nice beats for me to hit. Obviously, shout out Chris Hughes for putting on the Rebound All-Stars again this year. The other thing I did to help manage my time was to actually start putting out content on the day of a game. So pretty much as the game finishes, I cut something up really quickly and then put it out, and then it's done. The games I remember doing this for and it working fairly well were Reading, and I did the men and the women, and then I tried it again in Solent, and I think the Solent women's one was pretty good. I did miss the entirety of the men's game that followed, but it was worth it because I had some really good clips of these guys. They were an incredible team all season. And I think the track as well, once again, just helps. If you've got a good track, it just makes it so much more watchable. It was actually really good that I got to learn this and try it out because it became a really useful skill that I was able to apply into a whole load of other things later on in the season. Most notably, in fact, was the work I did with the BBL. The BBL, of course, last season made a real push for their video content, and in doing so, they got together a load of videographers and photographers to help put out more media on game day. And I think anyone who's worked on any of the BBL games this season will probably tell you the same thing. It's a quick turnaround, but I really appreciated the experience. I really enjoyed kind of getting to go along to these games and be a part of the BBL's social media presence. And even interviewing the players pre-game, that's something I hadn't had to do before, so that was kind of fun. While all this was going on, I was also still working, of course, on Euroleague and Euro Cup, but it was around this time that I actually moved from the digital team into the broadcast team. It had been for a very long time a goal of mine to actually film at a Euroleague game if possible, and this kind of presented the opportunity to potentially do that. So I was obviously thrilled to be able to make the move and join the team, but it wasn't long before I ended up on my first shoot at the Istanbul derby between Efes and Fenerbahce. This was a huge trip for me. I don't think I'd ever filmed anything overseas, let alone basketball, but the atmosphere, as you can imagine, in European basketball venues is on another level. And because of the nature of the shoot, we were able to get a lot of behind the scenes access, be able to speak to players, be able to mic up the coaches. It was just a very surreal experience having just watched these players on the screen. So yeah, I had a really great time. I think the feature turned out really well. If you haven't seen it, definitely go and check it out. And with that, we move on to the final part of the season, which is the finals. I didn't think about that before I said it. Just as I did in my first season, I was at the NBL Playoff Finals and the Junior Final Fours. It's always a very busy but enjoyable weekend. It was actually cool to see some of the teams that I'd followed throughout the season win their respective titles, so congrats to all those that won. Looking back on the highlight videos that I did from those events, I was pretty pleased with all of them. It's always hard to compare them because the Saturday highlights, they're always done on that night, so I'm up really late editing it. I'm maybe not in the same sort of headspace I would be if I was doing it, you know, with more time, but I'm pleased with how they came out. I guess they're all different in that sense. And with those finals concluded, there was only one thing left, which was arguably the biggest final in European basketball, the Euroleague Final Four. Right back at the start of the season, it was kind of in my mind that it would be really cool to be able to go to the Euroleague Final Four, but I didn't really expect it. It was only my first season working on Euroleague content. I didn't know what was going to happen. So to be able to go and have the experience that I did, I am just truly grateful. Felt like the culmination of everything I'd learned throughout the season. And not only that, but the city of Kaunas is really a city of basketball. So it's so nice to be in the fan zone, just surrounded by like-minded people and just celebrating the beautiful game of basketball. The craziest thing by far is that I was actually on court as Real Madrid won the final, watching them celebrate and then lift the cup. Honestly, I never ever thought I'd be there, and it was just, I keep saying it, but it was surreal. It was so crazy to be there witnessing such a precious moment for these guys in their career, and players that I'd watched throughout the entire season, you could see up close how much it meant to them. And with the end of the Euroleague season, that kind of brings us up to today. I haven't really done a huge amount of filming this summer. I've kind of been trying to take the time off and actually get some rest, but I feel the itch already to get back to the season and get back to filming. Definitely hard to know what next season is actually going to look like, but if it looks anything like this past season, then I'll be very happy. I'm trying to think what the big takeaway from all this is. I'd say maybe don't limit yourself to just one thing, maybe. Like, be open to the idea of trying different things out, maybe experimenting with different things within your field, but don't feel like you just have to do the one thing. I'd say definitely the importance of rest is like a super significant thing that I've learned. I'm getting those 8 hours of sleep every night now. And I'd say keep learning. Keep learning as the season goes on. Every single opportunity you get is an opportunity to learn something new. So thank you if you've made it to this point in the video. I really appreciate it. And if you want to check out any of the stuff that I've mentioned or stuff that I work on, then you can follow JLR Videography on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also find me on Gondola, which is a bit of a niche site, but it's really good for kind of collating a load of different social media posts from different platforms. I tend to try and keep a track of stuff on there, so you can find me there as well. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one. Goodbye.